Why did China invent so many early technologies like paper, printing and the compass centuries before anyone else? But Europe later dominated scientific revolutions. Galileo, Newton, modern physics. It wasn't a difference in ability, it was a difference in approach. The two societies just used science differently. One focused on how to keep a vast society running, the other focused on understanding how the world worked. And once you see that difference, China today makes a whole lot more sense. Let's compare how science actually worked in these two places. China was large and tightly run. Floods, famines and disasters could destabilize everything. If the calendar was wrong, crops fail. If disasters strike too often, people lose faith in the emperor. So science had a job to do. Someone like Zhong Hong wasn't rewarded for bold new theories, he was valued because his work helped the government respond faster and stay in control. That's why he builds an earthquake detector, not to prove the theory, but to warn the government. If science helped society function, it survived. If it didn't, it quietly disappeared. China became very good at keeping useful records. Europe starts from a different place. There's no single authority in charge. Instead, there are rival kingdoms, churches, universities and cities. That creates constant disagreement. Think about someone like Aristotle. He's not trying to fix floods or manage crops. He's just trying to explain how the world works. European science begins as people arguing about what's true, not about what's useful. And because nobody controls all ideas, those arguments never fully stop. That's why someone like Galileo matters so much. Galileo doesn't say that Aristotle is wrong, he checks. He points his telescope at the sky and invites others to look too. Even when he gets into trouble for observing that the Earth revolves around the Sun, his ideas don't vanish. They spread into other cities and other countries. Over time, Europe gets very good at one specific thing: questioning ideas and keeping the ones that hold up. It's messy, it wastes time, but it leads to breakthroughs. For a long time, these two scientific cultures barely touched. Then, in the late 1500s, that changed. When European visitors arrived in China, they soon realized that the Chinese were not interested in theory, they just wanted to know if it was useful. The Europeans brought better clocks, better star charts, better predictions. So European techniques were accepted, carefully. Math and astronomy were used to fix calendars and improve accuracy. They were treated as tools, not as new ways of seeing the universe. China took what helped the system and left everything else. At the same time, Europe was also picking up something useful from China. Not just inventions, but how society keeps knowledge from disappearing. China had already solved problems that Europe still struggled with. How do you preserve ideas across generations? How do you make knowledge durable instead of fragile? Paper made books affordable. Printing made copying routine. Records meant that ideas weren't lost when a person died or a city fell. That changed everything. Europe already argued constantly about ideas. Now, those ideas could spread widely, survive mistakes, and build on each other. Knowledge stopped resetting every generation. That didn't just speed up science, it made long-term progress possible. By the 1700s, something starts to shift in Europe. Science isn't about curiosity anymore. People finally start looking at new ideas and wondering if they can actually do something useful with it. And since Europe is full of separate countries all competing with each other, if one of them finds a way to make better steel or build a stronger navy, the others can't just ignore it. They copy it, improve upon it, and try to beat it. So new scientific ideas don't sit around for long. Someone tries to turn them into an advantage and tries to make money from them. Now look at China. China isn't made up of rival states constantly trying to outdo one another. It's one large centralized empire. The main goal isn't beating a neighbor, but it's keeping a huge population governed and stable. So technology is often used for administration, flood control and farming, things that keep the system running smoothly. That's a reasonable priority if you're running something that big, but it means that science is used in a different way, and at first you wouldn't necessarily notice the difference. Then, in the 1800s, the countries that tied science closely to industry start to change the world very quickly. When industrial powers show up at China's borders, the difference is suddenly very obvious. In Europe, they could produce cannons and rifles by the thousands, not by the dozens. That changed the balance of power very quickly. For about 100 years, China is pushed around. Foreign powers force ports open, pieces of territory are taken, decisions affecting China are being made in London and Paris. China wasn't short on ingenuity, it just didn't have the same kind of industrial muscle. China had been using science largely to run a vast society. Europe had used it to build machines that could project force far beyond its borders. That period leaves a deep mark on China, and the lessons are pretty clear. From that point on, the goal wasn't just learning Western science. It was building factories, building an industrial base, and being able to produce at tremendous scale, so that foreign domination never happens again. China didn't abandon its old approach, it updated it for an industrial age. It focuses heavily on turning research into manufacturing, supply chains, and infrastructure. China systematically shortens the time between the lab and mass production. Innovation isn't considered complete until it can be produced reliably, cheaply, and at scale. And science is expected to lead to real capabilities. And those capabilities are meant to keep the country strong and secure. This is a 19th century lesson applied directly to the 21st century. In the end, the difference isn't in the science. The tools are the same everywhere: data, networks, algorithms. The difference is in how the tools are applied. In Europe and much of the West, technology is shaped by markets. It's rewarded for attracting users, influencing choices, and scaling quickly. The individual is treated primarily as a customer. In China, technology is shaped by administration. It's rewarded for coordination, predictability, and stability at scale. The individual is treated as part of a managed system. The result isn't two kinds of technology, but two objectives. One exports platforms and influence, the other exports infrastructure and governance. Same technology, shaped by different incentives and released into the world with different consequences. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this scientific contrast between Europe and China interesting. Please subscribe, like, comment and share. It really helps the channel. Stay curious and I'll see you in the next episode of How the World Was Changed.